Welcome back, everyone, to Shaboom. This is Rick K. Jones bringing you insights, information, and opinions. Lots of opinions for my generation, the baby boomers. Today's word, the word of the week, is kindness. Here's some great quotes about kindness. Mark Twain said, "Kindness is the language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see." Boy, isn't that true? Mother Teresa said, "Kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless." Aesop said, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." And Princess Diana said, "Carry out a random act of kindness with no expectation of reward, safe in the knowledge that one day someone might do the same for you." You know, unfortunately, kindness seems to have gone out of style these days. That's unfortunate. You know, they asked a man the other day if it was ignorance or apathy, and he said, "Well, I don't know and I don't care." Well, that's funny, but it's really not so funny. Have we become so self-centered that we don't see places where small acts of kindness can make a difference? Have we become greedy, thinking we should keep all the money we make or have, or are we just numb and not aware of the needs that are out there? You know, I always make a point to smile at people. It kind of disarms them. You walk down the street and you smile at people, and it kind of stuns them a little bit, but they usually smile back. I find that's just an easy, simple act of kindness that works. I'm beginning to wonder where our kindness is in our political system. Can we somehow disagree without being so damn disagreeable? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that on our Shaboom Podcast Facebook page. Can we disagree without being disagreeable? My guest today is Sylvia Allen, who knows a lot about kindness and practices kindness each and every day. She is a former college professor, a corporate sponsorship marketing expert, and really one of the legends of our industry. But she is even better known for the amazing charity that she runs. It's called Sylvia's Children. Let's welcome Sylvia to Shaboom and hear all about it. My good friend Sylvia Allen, thanks for being with us today on Shaboom.
That's my pleasure, as always.
Well, I ask everybody the same first question. Where were you reared, and who were some of the early influencers in your life?
Okay, well, I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, but we moved to Minnesota when I was 5. So I grew up in Minnesota until 28 when I moved to New York. And I would say my grandfather, who was a phenomenal man, worked all the time, had his own business, come home from work at 6 o'clock, then he'd work in the greenhouse he was one of those. He and my dad had to build a boat up at the lake, and it was clay. And my dad was slightly crippled, and my grandpa would say, "Can't you move faster, Charles?" So I would say it was him. I would also say I was a very active child. My mother was very smart, no education beyond high school. But I think it was age 5 when she said, "Oh, go form a theater group." So I got my father to pay for a playbill, and I got Mary Bankston and Tommy Malott. I can think of still all of the kids, and we did a play. So I have a feeling that between Grandpa, my mother, if I came home with an A minus, "Didn't you get A?" There was always that, "You can always be better. You can always be better." And I've just spent my life like that. And to me, whatever mountain there is, there's another one.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned having the play. I can remember Jerry Lewis every Labor Day would have a telethon for muscular dystrophy. And as a child, you could order a carnival kit. And you
Huh?
could put on a neighborhood carnival to raise money for Jerry's kids. And I can remember being a child and doing that. And so when I finally opened my first agency, my aunt, Catherine, who we called Sissy, she sent me a note and she said, I see that little Ricky now has his real carnival.
Yeah,
So,
but don't you think it's wonderful that you did that? You just
yeah,
did it, right?
yeah.
"Okay, I'm gonna go do this," and when people say to me, "What makes you think you can do it?" "What makes you think I can't?"
I've always said there are two kinds of people in the world, those that say they can or those that say they can't. You're obviously a can do person.
We weren't allowed to say that. I only said "can't" once, and my mother said, "That word does not exist." Oof. My mother was a very powerful lady.
Well, it's interesting about those kind of influences. What was your first job out of school? What'd you do first?
Well, because I worked all the time, my first job was when I was 12. I was starting in I graduated from 8th grade, and I was starting in a high school that was very wealthy. "Well, Mommy, I want cashmere sweaters. I want cashmere" no, because they all had cashmere sweaters. She said, "Get a job." So in the back of all the women's magazines were these little certificates that says, "Have your own Christmas card and greeting card business." And I mailed off 10 of them and got 10 kits, and I had her take me to apartment buildings on Saturdays, and I would work the apartment buildings. Now this was this is how old I am, but this was 1949, and that summer I made over $1,000. Now, $49,000 translates to a lot today, and I did that all the way through high school, and when I graduated from high school, if I knew then what I know now, I'd have sold my route because people called me. They'd say, "We always buy our Christmas cards from you, Sylvia, or the greeting cards or the Easter cards or whatever." So I got this phenomenal experience of door to door running my own business. Nobody else handed me the money except the people I sold to. And it was great. It was fun. And and my mother never begrudged that Saturday taking me, waiting, and picking me up. So I had a support team too.
What got you into the sponsorship business?
Dumb luck, I think. When I went to college, quit after 2 years because I knew everything, you know, and, I was a disc jockey in a nightclub, and I ran a modeling school, the Zell McConnell Modeling School at 20 in, the Twin Cities. We trained all the, Northwest Airlines flight attendants. Well, then I said, "Well, you dummy, go back and finish college." So when and my college degree is speech and theater arts, with a minor in PR. And I worked at the college radio station. When I left and graduated, I went to work for KDWB, which was a Kroll Collier station. And I started just as a secretary. I was always willing to start as a secretary because I knew then I was inside and could work my way up. I then was promotion. I was Miss Wonderful on the hello. You have reached Miss Wonderful. Guys would come in looking for Miss Wonderful. Oh, I'm sorry, she just went to lunch. Uh, and I worked for several radio stations, and then I worked for KSTP-TV, which is an ABC affiliate, Hubbard Broadcasting, and I produced a daily TV live women's show and a 2-hour radio show. Phenomenal. Loved that job. Loved it. And at heart, I'm a producer. I love producing things. So, but I said, "You're never gonna go any further. This is it." So when I asked for a credit line in May of 1965, I went to Ken Berry and I said, "I want a credit line produced by Sylvia Allen." And he said, "You can't have it." He said, "I'm the producer." I said, "You're the executive producer." I said, "I'm the line producer." I said, "Without me, that show doesn't go on the air." He said, "You can't have it." I said, "Tell me why." He said, "Because you're a woman." I said, "Not a problem." I quit. I quit May 15th, 1965. Moved to New York June 14th, 1965, and said, I don't have anywhere to live. I don't have any money. I don't have a job. Maybe I better work on it." So I found the Alma Matthews Methodist Girls Club, $12 a week, room and kitchen privileges. I got a job with Videotape Center, and then that the whole East Coast experience has been the path of my life. So I worked in videotape. I worked for a film called a company called Leacock Pennybaker. We did all the Norman Mailer and Bobby Dylan, Truman Capote, all those guys we worked with. I'm in some of Norman Mailer's movies if you go to the Museum of Modern Art. And then I got married, had a daughter. Uh, then I had a son, and then I tried. I'm leading up to this because it is important. I thought I'll try staying home. My mother stayed home. I should stay home. Well, I stayed home for 2 years, 9 months, and 3 days. And I said to my husband, I said, "You hate working. I love working. You love staying home. I hate staying home. I'm going to go get a job." So I applied to 3 places and got a job with AT&T. And I wanted to be in their TV department, and the guy said, "No, we're going to put you in marketing." I said, "I don't want to be there." I said, "I want to be in your TV." He said, "Fine, you're hired for marketing." And that was great because I learned that was Arch McGill, who was phenomenal. I learned the corporate game. I didn't know the corporate game because most places, the biggest corporation I'd been at was McGraw-Hill, but that's a sanctuary. It's just a different kind of place.
One of the
So,
things I'm hearing is you figure it out.
oh yeah, oh yeah, and I'm easily bored. You say that's why I got 3 promotions at AT&T in the short time I was there because they'd give me a job. Okay, what next? Well, you're doing a good job. I don't want to keep doing it. I want to move on. So I I quit AT&T and said I've got to start my own business. And I didn't have a clue what I would do. And I started out with just PR and then advertising, and it grew and it grew. And I got to the point where I had an office in Fort Myers, Florida. I had one in Washington. I had one in Boston, and of course, one in New Jersey. I had 34 employees. Oh, you and I have both been through that. Uh, and we know what that's like. You lost your hair and mine went gray. But in 1986, I get a call from a guy, Michael Redpath. He ran the Jersey Shore Offshore Grand Prix. He said, "Sylvia, I understand you're good at PR." I said, "Well, yeah, we do our best." Well, he said, "We need PR and sponsors." Okay, I will tell you, I didn't have a clue what sponsors did. But I thought, okay, I'll find out. In the first year, I put together a package, gold, silver, bronze, and mailed it out to a list. Well, after year 1, I said, that is not how you do it. This is still door-to-door sales. I'm still selling Christmas cards. I'm just selling a bigger deck. And so I figured out with sponsorship how to give benefit to the sponsors, how to get the client to understand that this was a winning relationship, that it's not gimme, gimme, and it's not what did he do for me? And you have to ask nicely, you have to service phenomenally, and then you have to follow up. And I loved it. And of course, by 1989, I had it. And I'm sorry if any of you who were my employees at that time, I didn't dislike you. I disliked my job. All I was the president. But I didn't get to do the creative. The creative is what I like. The sales is what I like. The vision is what I like. I'm a good salesperson because I worry about the other person. I don't walk in the door and say, "I'm going to get $10,000. I walk in the door and I say, "How can I help Rick Jones with Shaboom be more successful?" So anyway, in December 31st, 1989, I closed all the offices. I got everybody, and I called everybody together in September. I said, "I'm folding this corporation as is. I'm going to talk to the clients and see how many of them will hire you," because all my people were good at the client level. And I made sure I got them jobs so that by December 31st, 1989, everybody had a job, everything was closed. January 1, 1990, I was a solo performer. And some of the clients had stayed with me, and that's how I evolved. Every once in a while I'd have to hire employees. Because people would say, well, we hear you're good at this. Did a lot of community development, bringing communities back to life through special events and PR and money. Uh, I had 1986 was when I had found out about the sports entertainment event marketing program at NYU. And I thought, oh, because I had taught at the new school, but I thought NYU was just creme de la creme. So I called, and it's the only time in life I made a lousy sales call because I said, well, I don't know if you would consider me, but I do have some experience. And the guy said, come in. And I met with him in 5 minutes. He says, you're hired. I said, well, you need to, he said, I don't need to know more. You're hired. And I taught in that for 20 years. I only taught
Right.
one course, then I would teach 2 courses a semester, and then early in the '90s, I said, "I wanna handle the intern program," and they said, "Well, you can share it with Don Smith." I said, "I don't share. I want that program." And Don said, "Well, I'll share it with you." I said, "It isn't up to you. I'm taking it over." He would get 2 internships a semester. The first semester I took it over, I got 12. I'd pick up the phone. I'd call the head of the NBA. I'd call Rick Jones. I would call the NHL. I'd say, "This is Sylvia Allen from NYU." Someone would say, "Well, we don't know you." I'd say, "Not yet, but you will, because I've got these phenomenal students that I'm training at NYU. They're over 21. Most of them have a degree. Their heart is in the field of sports, events, entertainment, whatever it was. And I guarantee you, after you've had them as an intern, you'll want to hire them." And I did that for 20 years. And at the end of 20 years, they said, "You have to join a union." I said, "No, I don't." "Yes, you do." I said, "No, I don't." I came from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandfather on both sides, my father, my Uncle Ray. I mean, it's in our blood. And they said, "You have to." I said, "No, I don't. I quit." Weirdly, it was 20 years to the day that I had gotten hired. So it was time.
Yeah,
So,
it was meant to be. One of the
yeah,
other themes I'm hearing though is it's never been about you. It's been about how you can help somebody else. And you were thinking with the students and the interns, I'm going to give you exposure that's going to propel you. And you think about some of the people that you taught and some of the things that they've gone on to do. I want to switch gears though. How did you get to Africa to find what becomes Sylvia's children? This is because this is a great story. So you're in
well,
Africa giving a speech, right?
before that, it's because I had launched a class at NYU in the sponsorship side or the events called How to Ask for Money. People are tenuous. Would you mind? They go, would you mind? Or I hope, or maybe. No, no, no. So I had approached the School of Philanthropy and Fundraising. I said, your nonprofits don't know how to ask for money. I want to teach this class to nonprofits. Oh, okay. It was wonderful because after a while, I'd always have people sign up for the classes. Okay, go ahead. I said, don't you want to see the syllabus? No, no, go ahead. So in January of 2003, I had this room full of nonprofits, the guy with the leather sleeves and the lady in the little cobby shoes and the very zealous executive who with some sort of, I mean, it was, the mixture. And this man saunters up to me and he says, how do you do? I'm so and so from such and such. I don't have to do any work. I just want you to know I'm just auditing. I said, well, how do you do, Mr. So and so? I'm Sylvia Allen. I travel 50 miles one way to teach from the heart. Get out. I said, I don't take audit students. This is a working class. You're going to learn. If you're going to audit, leave. He said, well, I said, leave or register. So he registered. Uh, Even though he was 6'3" and I'm 5'5", I think he thought, don't argue with her. And I was really rough on him because I thought, you're going to learn whether you want to or not. But by the third week, he said, I love your style. I said, I'll bet. He said, I want to invite you to Africa. Now, Rick, I've traveled the world. I've taught in Japan and China and Singapore. It's just a wonderful life that I have. But I'd never been to Africa. So I said, who's going? I already knew the answer because I'd just finished reading Poison Wood Bible. Well, he said, it's 5 ministers. I said, 5 ministers and me? He said, yeah, you'll be safe. I said, I wasn't worried about me. because I thought, oh my God, this is going to be an experience. But I said yes because just like, in 2007, I rode in the Iditarod. They said, do you want to ride in the Iditarod? Yeah. If it passes you, you got to grab it while you can. So in May of 2003, off we go to Uganda. Well, first we went to Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. And this is just a general commercial for the country of Africa. If any of you want to have an experience of a lifetime, you have to go to Africa. A, it's a different world. B, it makes you appreciate your world. So, and then in Uganda, it's when we got to Uganda that I was like, I'm supposed to be here. I don't know anybody. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know where I am. I'm in Uganda, and I thought, okay, I just know I have to be here. So we had 4 days there. So in church on Sunday, the ministers I was with were here to save you. And I stood up and I said, first place, thank you. Thank you for your love and your kindness. I will come back and I'll teach you how to be entrepreneurs. Then I sat down and I went, holy cow, how are you going to do that, Sylvia? Because I didn't know what I was going to say. Just sit. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I got to teach classes. We went to different towns. Wednesday, I'm teaching a group of business people how to work business-wise in America. You don't take your coffee beans individually to the coffee guy. You go as a group. You negotiate as a group. And at the very end, this man comes up to me and he hands me a plaque, and the plaque says, I thank God for who I am. And on the backside, it says, the children at the Embrisi School want you to be their grandmother. Understand, this is 2003, where the AIDS pandemic had killed not only grandparents, but tons of parents. I said, I can do that. I said, this is not a warm, fuzzy grandmother. This is not a rocking chair with a teddy bear sit on my lap grandmother. I'm going to help you become self-sufficient. And I said it from day one. So his name was Jeffrey Kawuma. He had a school that he'd had for 6 years. He had 4 buildings, 439 children, 139 of orphans. Came back to the United States. I had one lady who still was working for me. I said, I want to form Africa's Children. She said, no, form Sylvia's Children. Use your name. She says, give it an identity. I said, okay, Betsy, we're going to call it. So I incorporated as a nonprofit in the state of New Jersey. And then I said, what do I do? I've never run a nonprofit. I know how to run for profit. And then I said, come on, Allen Consulting helps nonprofits. We had always helped them raise money. We had always helped them get good PR. I mean, we knew how to do it. So I said, okay, get out of your Sylvia's Children head, get into Allen Consulting. And I just started. I filed for my own 501c3. People said you can't do that. Remember the can't word? And I did. I got it April 14th, 2004, because I called the guy every day since January 1. Hi, how are we doing? And finally, on April 14th, he said, you've got it. So I called him back on April 15th, and he said, can't you lose my number? I said, I just wanted to thank you for all the help you gave me. And if you look at, I think it was 2007, right, that you and your family joined me. That was the first year that I said, I need to get the message out there. It's just me right now doing this. So I told everybody we're going to take a trip, and there were 14 of us. It was the baptism by fire. I didn't know to weigh the suitcases. There were tons of things I didn't know. I'm now, when we go in November, it will be my 38th trip. I've got it down to a system. But on this trip, when we all get to JFK Airport, some of the bags were too heavy, some were light. And I just said, okay, get all the bags, we'll open them up. And we started shifting things around. Here are 14 of us. I never thought of it till long after, blocking this whole row of people as I have to get all the bags organized. And it was great. Everybody got to have the experience of understanding how little these people have. At that time, people lived on $2 a day. 5% of the homes had electricity. That meant 95% didn't. 5% had water. That meant 95% didn't. There's no septic system. It's a hole. It's an outhouse. I mean, at my lake house in Minnesota, I have an outhouse left from the early 1900s. I've left it just as a tribute to Grandpa Ray, but it's a seated outhouse. It's not a hole in the ground. This is hole in the ground. Most third world and developing countries have a hole in the ground. And it's been such a great experience. But again, all along, self-sustaining, self-sustaining. So I began, what can we, Jeffrey's the director and owner. He'd say, well, I want chickens because then we can sell eggs. Okay. So every time I'd give a speech and we need chickens and I'm at the Brielle Women's Club and this woman comes up to me, I would like to buy chickens. Fine. Ultimately, that woman spent over $300,000 with us because last year she said, I want to pay for all of Christmas for the kids because everybody knows, A, I'm in charge of the money. I have a lady that comes in once a week to balance everything, but I'm in charge. And I go to make sure it's being done. So many nonprofits, and bless their hearts, they're wonderful, but they say, all right, we're sending the money, build the road. And the guy keeps saying, we're working on it. Gee, we haven't seen the road yet. I said, you haven't gone. You have to supervise. You have to make sure they're not intentionally being dishonest, but they're poor. Right now in Uganda, the average daily income has gone all the way up to $8 a day. Now electricity is in 20% of homes. Water is in 20%. When I say water, it's a pipe outside your front door with a spigot. Electricity, it isn't like us, we get a bill, I'll pay my bill. You have a mobile app, put it up next to the electrical socket, wherever it is, and you're downloading, let's say, 50,000 shillings to pay for electricity. When that money's used up, off go your lights. And if
Well,
you
I have so many memories of the trip, um, and really, you can't understand Africa unless you go to Africa. I mean, you simply can't. I don't care how many documentaries you watch on television. There's nothing like physically being there. For us, I can remember Charlotte was a longtime first grade teacher, and so, I think there were 80 first graders that all tried to climb in her lap when she would read to them because these were children that had never been read to. And, and just one of the things that have stuck with me, Sylvia, all these years is these children had nothing, but they were joyful. They were unbelievably joyful. They would sing to us. They would play. I remember we took the basketball goals and the girls would tell the boys, you play soccer, football, we play basketball. It gave them an identity and something to do. Ryan had just graduated, my son, from high school. This was his high school graduation gift because I wanted him to understand how blessed he was and that there were people that were, and that, that made such an indelible part of him because I wanted him to understand, you're blessed to have been born. None of us get to choose who our parents were, where we're born, grace of God. These are human beings that have literally nothing. But I just remember the joy that the children had. And I remember the day that we made them all beans and rice.
Yeah.
We cooked beans and rice for them and just how thankful they were to get beans and rice and one soft drink. Remember, we bought them one soft drink. And so it still touches me, but it also, one person in New Jersey can make a difference in the lives of so many people because of your attitude of don't tell me I can't, I will. And you've really converted that facility into understanding how to be self-sustaining. And that's an amazing tribute to you and your tenacity. But now I know You figured it out. And so now, with the remaining part of your life, you got the ability to say, how do I scale this? How do I teach others to do what I did? I have cracked the code. I know how to do that. Talk about that for a minute. And before we're going to circle back for how people can help you, but I want to talk about the next journey for you and what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so and I'm going to back up just a little bit. In building this, I did some things wrong. Oh, whoops! Don't do that. Oh, well, okay. And I only do it wrong once because I'm a quick learner, and I kept working toward this self-sustainability. And it began 2 years ago. I thought, I think I'm going to sit down and figure out the revenue on all of this. I think by the end of 2025, the school can operate on its own. It won't need me. And I've made it, I want to make it so they don't need me. Because I also have to plan. Somebody said, what if you die? I said, well, I'll be dead. That much I'm sure of.
Yeah.
I said, but I don't have time right now. So the businesses, we have 20,000 chickens. We bought 7-acre farm. 20,000 chickens that have eggs. We have 100 pigs that have piglets. You sell the piglets. 500 coffee trees, 2 crops a year, spring and fall. We have a school bus that he can rent to other people for a
Now, I want
wedding.
people that are listening to understand none of this existed.
No,
None
no,
of
he
this
had
existed before.
he
Right.
had 4
Right.
buildings.
Right.
Okay, 4 buildings. He now has 26. We bought 27 sewing machines. So not only could he teach kids how to sew, but he could sew uniforms for other schools. I built a 6,000 square foot medical clinic, half of it for the school, half for the village. Uh, let's see. Oh, and we have a 50-piece brass band. He said, I want a brass band. Oh, okay. So I'd ask people for instruments. The biggest problem I had one time was a tuba that was too big to go on the plane. This was at JFK, and the guy said, we can't take the tuba. I said, where's your boss? He said, why do you want to see him? I said, because we have to get the tuba on the plane. Well, he's not here. I said, find him. Well, I said, I need to get the tuba on the plane. You're refusing to do it. So I need somebody who will accept it. We'll get it on the plane. I said, yeah, you're right. You're going to get it on the plane. So I have this 50-piece brass band that can play in parades, can play at weddings, all of this. So I have all of these revenue generating things. And I figured out even at the lowest amount, it would be 50,000 US dollars, which converts to a gazillion shillings. He would have enough money to offset tuition payments. He could still pay for the orphans to go to high school, still pay for the orphans to go to college, and it was time for the bird to leave the nest. Now, that was a very tough decision because I love those little kids. I love the work, but I also know they cannot grow up dependent. So when we were there in November, I went through all of this with Jeffrey, and of course, I had people on the trip who've gone multiple times. Oh no! Oh, how sad that Sylvia's Children is done. I said, how is it done? I said, the project is done. Just shut up in my usual soft style. Just give me till January. I have an idea. So I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do a healthcare initiative. We had done what is called a health farm, where we opened the clinic at the school up to the community. We served 500 people in one day from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And it solidified in my mind that's the next step. I have to do the healthcare initiative. So I've developed this, and I'm going to incorporate over in Uganda. It's called a URSB. I don't even know what all of it means, but I want the corporation to be a Ugandan corporation. It'll still be controlled here. I'm going to still control the money, but I want it to be established that way because it will be a rural healthcare initiative based on the hub and spoke model that we would be the core and then offer these resources out. So I thought, all right, I know what we need to do. How in heaven's name am I going to do all of this by email? And I'd found people. Well, people found me. when we did a groundbreaking because we built a boys' lavatory and a girls' lavatory, flush toilets, all that. Here comes this big guy. I'm 6'3", 250 pounds. Holy cow. I said, who are you? He says, I'm David Mugabe. I said, why are you here? He said, I came for the groundbreaking. I said, what's your job? I'm the health director for the Luengo district. That's where my clinic went. And that's where I want to put a clinic went. Thank you, God. And when we were all done and we're chit-chatting, he said, I humbly ask, I hope you learn to trust me so you can work with me and I can work with you. Thank you for loving my people. Okay, he was mine. On that same trip, I had the Kanani Rotary come over and see the clinic, and because I also built a computer lab with 40 computers, and the head of that Rotary said, Sylvia, we will help you on anything you do because you make it get done. So now I got the Rotary, I got this guy, I've got Miss Izzy Moses, who was my clinic director, his assistant, Sakito Martin. I'm getting so I can say all these names. I had 4 people. Okay, yes, they want to be part of the clinic. And again, God, you know that God is at, well, it's really the Holy Spirit that helps me. God's busy doing some other stuff, but she's keeping me busy. A friend of mine runs a school up in Lucaya, which is about 40 miles from where we were. She said, I'm going over in March. I have a little house there. You can come stay with me because you're going to need to have meetings with these people. So I did. We set up everything. We wrote bylaws. We figured out what we were going to do. I said, here are the next steps. I will look to all of you to manage the Ugandan end. I'll do the American end. I know what to do there. And that's what's happened. They have found 3 acres of land already that we can buy. This woman that I have on my team is phenomenal. Beatrice, I would take Beatrice to work for me in a heartbeat. If you send Beatrice a note, and Africans are quite often on African time, like Native American time. If I write Beatrice a note at 8:00 tonight, she will have answered that in the morning. They're 7 hours ahead of us. She would have answered it at 6 a.m. her time. So she's following through on the whole legal part. So what we're going to do is it looks like we'll have the legal end done probably by the second week in June. I can then buy the land. Once I buy the land, then David Mugabe, who's my expert, he's also, besides head of the health department, a farmer. When we had the meeting, I said, folks, I've got ideas for revenue, but what should we do? He says, we're going to do coffee trees. Great. I said, get me an estimate. So I've got the estimate to put in 500 coffee trees. It's $3,000 to dig up the land by hand. You saw that. They hoe it. Plant the trees and water them for a month with 2 farmers. 3,000. Well, that means I also have to get the well in so
Yeah,
I can
you got to
water
get the
them.
water from somewhere. Yep.
Yeah. So I had written, Martin is the techie guy. I said, Martin, currently you can pay for your electric with a mobile app. I don't want to have to hire somebody to staff the well when they sell. I want to find out if it can be done either, prepay, whatever. Son of a gun, I got an email yesterday, Sylvia. There is a system from the Netherlands. It's already in place in 2 places in Uganda. 2 Rotaries sponsored it. Bingo. I know the head of Rotary grants for the country. So it's an opportunity for him. So those few things, I said, all right, then what we can do by September, we can have the trees planted, the well in, a fence around, and put up a sign. Future site of Uganda Clinic and Wellness Center. And in addition to the clinic, because we've toured clinics, if you want to be depressed, go to a Ugandan clinic. It's horrid. There's nothing. There's no life, no energy, no light. You come in sick. You don't want to get sicker. So I got a whole plan. We'll do instead of a waiting room with benches, if you're pregnant and you're in labor, you don't want to sit on a bench. We'll do a gazebo for a waiting room. I'll put in a little playground because they all bring their children. so let them have a playground. I'll put in a cantina, coffee shop, but I'll lease it to the community. So now you've got community involvement. We will have a self-insured program, 30 people to a unit. They'll put in the equivalent of 50 cents a week. So what will happen is let's say I'm 40 miles now from the clinic. That's why the hub and spoke concept is so important. My only mode of transportation in rural Uganda is my feet. I don't have a car. I don't have a bicycle. A boda boda, which is a moped, as you know, may come down my little dirt road. Probably not. So I'm 40 miles out. I go into labor. Everybody has a cell phone. I call the clinic. Hey, Moses, I'm in labor. I'm group number 2. Moses says, I'll call you right back. He calls group number 2 head and says, Sylvia's in labor. Do you want to pay for it out of her funds? Yes. The guy at the clinic is the only one that has access to the funds. He gets the funds. He sends the ambulance, which is built on a boda boda. I've got it on the front of my brochure that we're just producing. He picks her up. She's taken. Now, the midwife goes out. He may deliver the child there. If there are complications, he brings her back. If it's further complications, here comes the spoke part. We know where to take her. My feeling is this is a prototype. I'm sorry, a model. I will write a manual to go with it. And then because Rotary has been so good to me, I would like to take it to Rotary International in Chicago and say, here's a plan.
This could be a global program for you. Here's some takeaways that I'm hearing. Number one, Scripture says, what you do for the least, you do for me. You're doing for the least. I also know how a little bit of money goes so far in the things that you do. There's so many ways that you can help. And, I have a former business partner. He has 2 wonderful sayings. One, he says, coincidence is when God chooses to be anonymous. There are no coincidences. Every time I turn around and you had a problem, there was a solution that fell in your lap. But the second thing he says is, want to change the world, just fix your backyard.
Yeah.
Just fix one little thing at a time. And for the listeners out there, I want to remind them that not only have you run this charity, you still run Allen Consulting. You still have a business that you do. So I like to say Sylvia's children is what Sylvia does in her spare time, and not in her full time, which is amazing. But the theme of Shaboom this year is, how do you turn success into significance? And for my audience that are out there right now, you have money, you have time, you have resources, you have all sorts of ways to give back. You don't have to go start your own orphanage. You can help this one. You can help with this prototype that can lead to other things. I call it the great quilt. When you get to heaven, the first thing you're going to see is the quilt. You're going to see the stitches. You did this that led to this, that led to this, that led to this. This prototype, long after we're all gone, this prototype is going to multiply. It's going to compound, and it's going to change human beings' lives. That's what it ultimately does. And I'm so grateful for what you've done. So tell everybody that's out there listening today how they can help you in this next phase.
God forbid I not launch into this, right? Thank you for the lead line. Well, I will tell you that to build a clinic is $479,000. And if you looked at a 6,000 square foot clinic in the United States with all the equipment and everything else, it wouldn't even be 4 million. It would probably be 47 million. It's just mind boggling. I'm hoping that there will be, like, for example, in this first village we're going into, that there'll be somebody who wants to have naming rights. For $250,000, it can be the Rick Jones Clinic and Wellness Center. And that naming rights, like the clinic at the school, is the Hines Family Medical Center, because the Hines family wanted to make a statement of care and concern. But what they can go to sylviaschildren.org. Don't go there. after June 1 because we're in the process of revamping. But they can sponsor a family for health care for $720 a year. That's $60 a month. They can name a room. They can, in the children's room, at this one clinic where it was nice, at least it was nice, where they had black velvet drapes over the windows. In the children's ward, I want to do all sorts of Disney characters on the walls. They know what Disney is. And you can buy a Disney decal for $250 that says get well soon, and you sign your name. So it's everything from little stuff all the way to if you want to send me $479,000, I gladly accept. We take cash and checks. We don't take credit card, and we do PayPal. Uh, it's or you can just make a general donation. Here, Sylvia, understand you've got to build a fence, is the example. And I understand it's $10,000. Here's money for the fence, or you have to do a well, or you have to do that. Any donation is gratefully received. I think the hardest thing for people is they say, well, I've only got, and it's $10 or $100. I say, that's $10 I didn't have. That's 100 I didn't have. It's like I live in a house built in 1720 and I have a brick patio. I bought old bricks and every brick is important to me. But if I lose one, I can put another one in. If I only have cement and I lose it, I've got nothing. So any donation is fine. I do want to do the commercial for the trip, which is November 5th to November 18th. On this trip, it's new. We're still going to do a Christmas party, and I'll explain that in a minute. But you will get to meet the Ugandan team. You will tour clinics. You will tour the best hospital in Kampala. You will tour another school. Then you will help us put on a Christmas party for 600 kids. We are now going to go to the mustard seed school. And I know the woman that runs that. And I said, what are you doing for Christmas for the kids? Well, they get a basket of food. I said, let me try it again. What are you doing for the kids? Well, they get to eat. I said, okay, I'm a 5-year-old. Do I want a chicken or do I want a pair of sunglasses, Mardi Gras beads, stickers, sweets? I'll take the bag. She said, we can't afford it. I said, I raised the money. I need $15,000 so I can do Christmas for these kids. We do a goodie bag for each kid. We have Mr. and Mrs. Claus. We have elves. I have a tree. I have this beautiful green tree. The guy loves to be the tree. And we prepare a meat sauce over rice or G-nut sauce for the vegetarians, matok, which is the boiled mashed green bananas, and and a soda. And then we end the trip at the Mawea Safari Lodge because you will need time to breathe. It's a wonderful experience. You're way up here, then you're way down here. The cost for the trip is $3,500 plus airfare. I make sure I take care of all the arrangements and everything. You will stay at a hotel. You will have electricity. You'll have running water. You will have a floor. You won't have a dirt floor. We've stayed at the Golf Lane Hotel for 10 years. It is like an upgraded
But
Holiday Inn.
more importantly, it will change your life.
Oh,
I mean,
oh,
it changed my life. It changed my son's life. It is such an unbelievable opportunity. Look, the safari itself is worth the $3,500. I mean, are you kidding me? But and you're right because you want to help, but you have to have time to breathe and think and process and say what's next and how do we do some things. Hey, we're about to run out of time. I want my listeners out there, and I got a bunch of them, folks. You can make a difference here. You know, just think about the you know the stock market, what it's done over the last 30 years. Sell a little bit of stock, sell a little stock that's non-appreciated, send it to Sylvia. She'll cash it in for money. She's a not-for-profit, a 501c3. There's things that you can do to make a big difference. We got to go because we're about out of time.
sorry.
But if there's anybody on the planet that has turned success into significance, it is you, dear.
Ah,
You have made a difference in hundreds, if not thousands, of children, of God's children's lives and families. And I can't commend you enough for what you've done.
ah, of course, you know how to make me cry. Thank you. Uh, I do know, because I have heard from some students that were ours when they were orphans, who are now I have one in England who's working on her master's in healthcare management. She said, "Maybe I can come back to Uganda, Sylvia, and run a clinic for you."
Yeah.
To me, that
There's
says
the
it all.
quilt. There's the
There
quilt. That's
Yeah,
the first stitch of the quilt. We don't know what it's like.
and
Listen,
Rick,
you're the best. You're absolutely the best. I
thank you.
love you. I'm so proud of you. Folks, you can help. Go to sylviaschildren.com right now. Look at it. She's going to have other information there for you. If you can have a chance in November to make the trip, make the trip, make some donations, get involved. When you see these children, and even if you don't go, she sends you pictures of these children that you help. You'll see real human beings and the changes you're making in their lives. I got to let you go now, but I can't thank you enough for being part of Shaboom today.
Thank you so much.
The song of the week is a great song by Tim McGraw. It's called Be Humble and Kind. What a great way to live your life. Other songs about kindness on the playlist are Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper, A Better Man by Clint Black, Empathy by Alanis Morissette, Try a Little Tenderness by the great Otis Redding from Macon, Georgia, and finally, one of my favorite John Prine songs ever done by the wonderful Bonnie Raitt. It's the classic Angel from Montgomery. It's time to get back on the road with Rick. There's this really cool little diner in Atlanta in Buckhead off of I-75 at the corner of Northside Drive and Paces Ferry Road. It's called the OK Cafe. Years ago when I lived in Dallas, the OK Cafe was my Atlanta office. I would come to the OK Cafe when I was on business trips, and I would always get a corner booth where I could see the people that are coming in. I had a window. In fact, I had two windows because it was a corner, a lot of light. And I would tell the waitress, look, here's the deal. I'm going to be here all day, and I'm going to tip you all day. Okay. So as if you were turning tables. Going to have a cup of coffee with the first guest. I'm going to have breakfast with the second guest. I'm going to have more coffee with the third guest. I'm probably going to have another coffee with the fourth guest. I'm going to have lunch with somebody. I'm going to have coffee again. I'm going to be here literally all day. Now, the great news is they had killer food. Well, number one, they had great waitresses. I mean, wonderful waitresses that were dressed in the classic diner waitress outfits, kind of like, remember the movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and the hit TV series Alice that was an extension of that movie. We lost Ellen Burstyn not long ago, the great actress who played Alice in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Uh, those classic diner uniforms. So they had those. But they had killer food. I mean, really great food, unbelievable breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They always had a choice of about 20 vegetables. And at a certain time of year, they would get fresh white acre peas. And I love white acre peas. It's rare you can find them anywhere, but they would have them. So you would get maybe a meat with two vegetables, and I would get double orders of the peas. Really, really good. They also made a great chicken fried steak. Great place. The OK Cafe in Atlanta, Georgia, kind of the power place in Atlanta. For years, there was a place up the hill called the Snackin' Shop where the leaders, the captains of industry in Atlanta would come to. But once it closed, the OK Cafe became the place for all the power players in Atlanta. And it was my office for a number of years. The OK Cafe on the road with Rick. It's now time for the boom. You know, you're out on the street, you're in a hurry, and there's somebody sitting over here in a wheelchair or in a chair with a sign, homeless, can you help me? Charlotte, my wife, always reminds me that when you see that person, that was somebody's baby boy or baby girl. Kind of changes the perspective, doesn't it? That was somebody's little baby at one time in their lives. And the first thing you should always do is acknowledge their humanity. You know, what we tend to do is maybe we'll pull out a few dollars and not look at them and hand them some money. No, 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 no. You need to look them in the eye. You need to look them and acknowledge their humanity and say, hey, take this. I hope this gets you something to eat. Look, they may go out and buy booze with it or drugs with it, but you've let it go at that point. It's in God's hands. It's in their hands at that point. But always, always, when you give them something, always look at them and always acknowledge their humanity. And that's the boom for today. It's now time to take a trip down memory lane, talk about kindness. Well, it's January of 1976, and I am a senior in college, and I'm about to go student teach. And at Georgia Southern, you would write down the 3 places you wanted to go in order of where you wanted to go. You know, you'd go back to Swainsboro, Waycross, or wherever you were from. I wrote down at the beach, at the beach, at the beach. And my supervising teacher, a guy named Bill Spieth, he laughed and he thought that was funny, and he sent me to the beach. He sent me to a private school on St. Simon's Island at Frederica Academy. And when I got there, it didn't take long, but my supervising teacher quit, and I got hired. I didn't even have my degree yet. I had to finish the school year and go back to summer school to get my degree to continue to be the athletic director and teacher and coach at Frederica, where there was a wonderful family there that had 2 boys that went to Frederica Academy, Al and Emmy Minor. And their gift to me and to our other coach, Gary Larkins, the late Gary Larkins, we lost him a couple of years ago. Their gift to us was they fed us breakfast every day, Monday through Friday, every day. Talk about wonderful kindness. I mean, I think I'm making $8,000 a year. You know, I didn't have a lot of money, but I get this unbelievable breakfast every morning. It was perfect for a couple of starving teacher coaches. And did they put on the food? I mean, always had stone ground grits, always had, you know, English muffins with fresh crab meat and cheese that was toasted, king mackerel and eggs, you know, bacon, sausage. You know, some days they had barbecue and eggs, some days they had steak and eggs. I mean, real breakfast. Wonderful people, wonderful time on St. Simon's. Al and Emmy Minor, that's my trip down memory lane today. Wonderful, wonderful kindness. Well, here's the last word on kindness. The author Henry James said, 3 things in life are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind. Amen to that, to all of you, my brothers and sisters. Let's all be kind out there, because they tell me it's contagious. Thanks to the great Sylvia Allen for being my guest, and to each of you for listening. I hope you'll join us again next week on Shaboom.